This is Between the Brackets, a MediaWiki podcast, episode 12, July 10th, 2018. Welcome to Between the Brackets. I'm Yaron Koren, and my guest for this episode is Stanislav or Stas Malyshev, who has been at the Wikimedia Foundation since 2014 and is currently a senior engineer in the Search Platform department. He formerly worked in the since restructured Discovery Group. As part of his job, he also works on the Wikidata Query Service. Before he joined the Wikimedia Foundation, he worked on PHP, i.e. he was part of the team that develops the language, and he also worked on SugarCRM. Stas, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm still part of the PHP team, so still helping, not as much as I used to, but still part of the team.
Very good. Okay, that's good to know. We'll get to PHP soon after this. So I looked at your user page on MediaWiki.org. It doesn't have much biographical information, but you do list the languages you know. You have a box on the page saying that you're fluent in Russian, near fluent in English, advanced in Hebrew, intermediate in Ukrainian, and basic in Spanish. I also looked at your LinkedIn page, and there I see you attended Hebrew University in Israel in the late 90s.
Yes.
Now, I could have just asked you for some biographical information, but for fun, I thought I'd do a Sherlock Holmes and try to deduce your early biography based on just those pieces of information. So I'm going to guess that you were born and grew up in Kiev, and then moved with your family to Israel, and specifically the Tel Aviv area in the early 90s.
Mostly, but I moved without my family. I just moved alone, and I studied in Hebrew University in Jerusalem.
Oh, wow, okay.
So I spent several years in Jerusalem.
So you moved there to go to college?
Yes. Well, I moved there because I just wanted to move there.
Right. But it was soon before...
Yeah. And I had my... studies done in computer science in Hebrew University. And then I don't know if you know how the jobs in Israel are located. Basically, all the good jobs are mostly in the middle of the country, so I moved to Tel Aviv area after that.
Right. So you don't have any family in Israel, you just went there by yourself?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Well, now I do because my wife's family is there. So, but I didn't have any family then.
Yeah. Oh, I see. So you met your wife there, and then both of you moved to the U.S. at some point?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Moving on to your career, I have to say you have a pretty amazing resume as far as open source goes. You've worked on PHP, SugarCRM, MediaWiki, and Wikidata, and I feel like we could do a whole episode on any one of those because they're all relevant in some way to this podcast. But let's talk about PHP. From what I understand, you worked at Zend Technologies from 1999 to 2010, which is a pretty long time.
That's true. I was one of the first employees. When I started, there was not much of a Zend Technologies. There was just Zev and Andy who made this rewrite to PHP, and they decided to make a company for it. And they started hiring people, and I was one of the first people to be hired.
Yeah.
So,
I think a lot of even people who use PHP don't realize that it's to some extent Israeli software.
What happened basically? So Rasmus Lerdorf wrote the first version of it. First two versions, actually, I think. I'm not sure about the PHP 2 thing. And then Zev and Andy basically rewrote the most of the engine behind it to be kind of combined compiler interpreter, which is largely still now, even though the code has changed a lot. And that was the base of PHP 3, which became pretty popular.
Yeah. Did you realize at the time how big PHP was going to become? Was it already, having a big upward trajectory?
Not really. So when I joined, I was mostly programming Perl and a bit of PHP, but I liked PHP too. So it was interesting for me. And when we started, basically my first task was to build the site for this new Zend company. And while I was building it, I discovered that some things and pieces are missing in PHP and some don't work as well as I would like to. So I started contributing patches. And that's how I became also a part of the PHP project.
Oh, so they brought you on just as a web developer or something? Just like
yeah, so my first task was to basically build the site for Zend. And
wow, that's very interesting.
I sincerely hope none of this code still exists because it was old.
Oh, okay. So, what kind of things were you doing though over the course of the time you were there?
Oh, all kinds of things. So there was a very fun voyage. So starting with building the site and developing all kinds of components for that, and building the PHP and building the components for it. So building the optimizer, the code cache, which is now opcache, standard part of the PHP that everybody who's interested in performance using, working on the debugger, porting PHP to all kinds of exotic platforms like iOS or these big mainframes or all kinds of not AX, or other kind of platforms that people in open source don't hear too much from.
Yeah.
So all kinds of fun things like this, and building all kinds of software around PHP, like debugging, monitoring, clustering, all kinds of things like that.
Wow. Okay. We're obviously going to get to MediaWiki later, but is there any kind of synergy between your work on MediaWiki and your work on PHP in terms of, at MediaWiki, within your MediaWiki job, you realize that something is some support, debugging support or optimization or anything else is missing from PHP, and then you have the ability to actually add that in.
It certainly gives some insight about what PHP shouldn't have, and kind of gives a perspective. So I have, by the time I've worked with MediaWiki, I've already worked with other large projects and framework on PHP, so I kind of already encountered most of the things that we encounter in MediaWiki, maybe from slightly different angles, but still it's, let's say, a lot of big projects have the same things and same issues and same concerns that the MediaWiki does. The way that they address might be slightly different for both historic reasons and use case reasons, but the problems are pretty common, pretty similar, and people kind of have somewhat similar ways of solving them.
Yeah. On that note, Facebook, of course, is one of the big PHP users. And they created their own, I don't know what exactly it is, interpreter, compiler.
They created the PHP runtime. Another interesting thing that many are not aware of that Facebook did in the course of it, they helped create PHP spec. So there is a kind of document that basically specifies what PHP is. So it's not very widely known, but it exists.
Oh, okay.
And they kind of contributed a lot to this work to kind of have a more formal description, because before that PHP was just what the code does, more or less.
Right. Sort of like the MediaWiki parser, I guess.
Yeah, something like that.
So were you involved at all in the hip hop or HHVM thing or anything else with Facebook?
No, not much. I know and talked to some people that were participating and leading this project, but I haven't been involved in any way with the project itself, except for like being curious about it and watching it and so on, but not contributing in any way.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm curious how you ended up doing all this open source stuff. Did working at Zend spark your interest in open source, or were you already interested in open source, and that's part of why you joined Zend?
I was kind of interested in open source before. I've been using Linux since it was distributed on floppy disks.
Oh wow!
And I've been using SPARQL a lot, which has a very wide open source ecosystem, the CPAN thing. There's a couple of CPAN models that may be still alive that I authored, even though they are by now like 15 years old probably.
Right.
And I was very interested in the whole thing before, and when the .com started and all these things started with building tons of sites, I was working with all kinds of open source software, and it was very fascinating what you can do from largely free components, and how many people just have this amazing collaborative effort that anybody can use without paying anything, without being restricted by any agreements or contracts. And it's a fascinating thing. That's basically what we are doing in Wikimedia for knowledge. That's the same idea, like just people contributing and everybody using it. And I think that's fascinating that people really can do it and how far it can go. So it was very, very interesting for me to be part of this effort.
Yeah, I remember when Cold Fusion was supposed to be, take over everything. The proprietary web scripting language.
So that's also the power of these efforts. That even if the people that initially initiate them move away or become uninterested, or maybe even initial use case becomes not relevant anymore. Like Erasmus built PHP for his personal web page. He probably could use any of the technologies that exist now to build his personal web page. Nobody invents a new language now to build his web page, but this effort grew and turned out into something much bigger because other people were interested in it and were free to contribute and were free to share. And when they using it, they were also free to kind of improve it and got interested in it and contribute their work and their knowledge to it. So I think that's an amazing model.
Yeah, absolutely. Does it ever bother you the sort of, I don't know how to put it, the lack of coolness, I guess, of PHP compared to languages like Python and Ruby that always get a lot of attention?
Yeah, I know. Not much. Like, it's kind of let's say a bit upsetting that people kind of regard PHP with disdain before being informed. Like I know all the words and problems of PHP, and I know that some of the criticism is well earned, but some of it isn't. And I wish people educated themselves a bit more before basically acting on stereotype. Yeah. I don't think it hurts PHP too much because people that are really in the trenches, kind of, they know more and kind of more educated about it.
Yeah, sure.
But I would wish like the more academic people would give themselves time to really kind of educate themselves more before they dismiss the whole thing, which I feel is not for all of them, and not far from it, but for some of them it's the case that they just dismiss anything about PHP before they even know what's happening, or they acting on information that was true like 10 years ago and not true anymore.
Right.
And that's a pity. Like nobody can know anything, but if you have an opinion about something, then it's better that your opinion is based on facts that are relevant now and not on myths that maybe were half true 10 years ago. So that's my position on it.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things to criticize PHP for, as I'm sure is the case with many languages. But I'm very happy when people criticize it on factual grounds.
Oh, right.
But on the grounds that are half mythical, half opinion, and half just not true, I wish people didn't do it.
Yeah. Well, for what it's worth, it doesn't seem to have impacted PHP's popularity. I mean, you wouldn't really know it if it just reading tech publications and stuff, but PHP is still extremely popular.
Yeah. And that's I think that's great that a project that is so kind of old, maybe established is better way to say, is still being developed and still is popular and still active. There is kind of unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I don't know, in tech industry there is kind of this thing that new is always better, no matter what. If there is a new framework, that means it's better than the old framework, no matter what. So from that point of view, I think PHP being able to hold up despite not being new anymore for a while is a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on, after Zend, you worked at SugarCRM for 4 years, if I understand correctly. For those of you who don't know, that's SugarCRM is a popular CRM application that stands for Customer Relationship Management. And SugarCRM is also the name of the company that produces it. And it was open source, I should say. So what were you doing there at SugarCRM?
So I was doing a number of things. One of the major things that I think worth mentioning that might be interesting, there was a major move that happened with the SugarCRM, moving from basically old model of monolithic application that takes user input and spits out HTML pages to a kind of service-based application where there is a modern JavaScript on the front and a set of REST services on the back. And these platforms communicate to each other through well-defined interfaces, which also allows a lot of extensibility because you can write your own front end that communicates with the back end in ways that you want to.
Right, for mobile access or anything else.
Yeah, it was a huge effort.
Yeah.
And very complicated. A lot of people took part of it, and I was one of them. And it was largely successful. And that's, I think, a cause to be proud for everybody, including me. So this was very interesting work that taught me a lot about how the applications, modern web applications, can work. Also, I worked on parts of the effort to make basically a SugarCRM scalable by kind of basically allowing to run the same application in on different sites with different customizations without duplicating basically the application. So if you need, let's say, if you need 10,000 instances of SugarCRM, if you just had like different databases, that would be easy case because you could just configure like different databases and have the same code. Right. But the complication is SugarCRM is very customizable, so code is mostly the same but slightly different. Like each instance could have different extensions, different kind of configurations, different modifications of the code that change it ever so slightly, but not make it exactly different application, but slightly different. And running this in massive scales without duplicating everything is pretty complicated challenge. So that's one of the things I worked with, and it was successful. So that is one of the technologies that SugarCRM was enabled, basically enabling have kind of their cloud solution by this technology.
Yeah, cool. I guess it sounds like it was basically a rewrite or refactoring of the entire code.
For the rest, not entire code, but a large base of the code was changed or refactored or moved around to enable this. Yeah, and it was a massive effort.
You left SugarCRM in 2014, I believe, which is interesting because that was the year that they essentially abandoned the open source version of SugarCRM and said they were only going to release the paid proprietary version from then on. And actually, just a few months ago, they officially shut down the open source version completely. Was that?
I haven't heard about that.
Oh, okay, yeah, it was just just a few months ago it happened, I think. Was that tied into why you left?
Not directly, but kind of tangentially, yes. So they took kind of the direction that I think was different from what I would like. I think there was like multiple factors that made me kind of move on, and one of the things was that the major things that I did were largely done and working, and I was just, I think, ready to kind of do something different. The non-open source direction maybe contributed. It wasn't like major like factor of the decision. I've worked with closed source software before, and I don't have like an allergy to closed source. I think it has its place in the ecosystem, but the general direction, I guess, was something that I think just I had to do something different.
Okay. So I don't know if you're much of a user of CRM, but I feel like I have to ask, if someone were to ask for your advice on which CRM solution they should use for their company now, what would you recommend?
That's a very hard question for me, because first of all, I don't really know too much about CRM as a user because I'm a programmer, not a salesperson, not a marketing person. Second of all, what I do know from like talking to the users and so on, I know that the needs of the people are widely different, and depending on them, the best solution. So SugarCRM, the kind of the offering of it, at least like you might take it with a grain of salt, because this is information is like 4 years old. So I'm not sure what's happening now, but back then it was extremely customizable and extremely made basically to support the different workflows and different kind of different ways of working, different ways of different types of data, different types of workflow, and so on. So it is both good and might be not good. Like if you're, say, a lawyer, then that would just wants these two things from the package, then you just go and come to the company that does this exactly for you, and no matter what the platform is, you just don't care. Like if it's on SugarCRM, fine. If it's on Salesforce, fine. If it's on something else, fine. Nobody cares. You just needed to do the thing. If you're a company that has many complex workflows and kind of many things that they foresee in the future, they might extend and do different things that they might not even know now, and they need platform that can extend. Then SugarCRM, at least when it was open source, I hope it's still the same now, is very fit to this purpose. It's very extensible, very generalized. It has a lot of hooks inside that programmer can use and do all kinds of fascinating things with the data and so on and so forth. So it's very, very flexible, and you basically have the code, if you want, it runs on your servers or on any dedicated server that you set, and you can have complete control of what's happening, and any PHP programmer can basically amend it. So from that perspective, it was very, very good offering for people that need it.
Right. So, interestingly, you were there at SugarCRM at the same time that Lila Tretikov was the CIO. The people listening to this podcast, if they've heard of her at all, probably know her as having been the executive director of the Wikimedia Foundation from 2014 to 2016, when she had a pretty controversial tenure. But you joined the Wikimedia Foundation not that long after she joined, I think about 6 months later. So I guess I have two questions. Is it a coincidence that you both left at around the same time? And is it a coincidence that you both joined the Wikimedia Foundation, or did she play some part in either of those? In my leaving Sugar, she didn't probably play any part. I think it might be that she left for many of the same reasons I did. I don't really know, but just that the project seemed to have been completed.
It might be just that the direction that that she also wanted to do something different. About my joining the Wikimedia, yes, she played a part. I when I decided to do something different, I didn't know what that different thing would be, and I talked to various companies and various projects and tried to figure out what I want to do next. And I talked to Lila too, and she described me the vision that Wikimedia had and MediaWiki had. And before that, I was of course using Wikipedia, and I of course knew about MediaWiki. I maintained MediaWiki installs and so on, but I hadn't really was, I guess, paying attention to the vision of the foundation and the overall these big things of getting the sum of human knowledge available to everyone. I didn't really think about it. And when I talked to her, I really thought about it, and it looked like the thing that is worth doing. So that's why I joined, I guess. So she played a major part in this, just basically making me focus on what the foundation are doing, and making me realize that this is something I might be wanting to do too.
Right. It wasn't so much a technical sales pitch as talking about open data.
Well, technical, I'm in the industry for a long time, so I know what people do and how they do it and so on. So there's a wide selection of places where my expertise might be useful, but they're two different things. So you need also to consider what if it's the thing that you want to do, and if it's the thing that you can be part of and can develop with and so on. So Wikimedia seems to be something that is really exciting in this regard. Yeah.
So now you're working on MediaWiki in the search group or department. What specifically are you doing there?
So lately I was doing mostly search on Wikidata. Before that, I was working on general refactoring of the search and improving search to make it more more flexible and more available for extension, which is what I'm using now when I'm building a search for. I've built already search for Wikidata. Basically, we did a major improvement of how we search Wikidata, and lately we're working on Wikidata components like themes, and the next big things would be structured data on Commons, making search work well there. So it's a very interesting and kind of tricky thing, because basically the standard search is kind of geared towards these big blocks of text that the challenge it like find the words in the text that kind of match the words that you give and present them. This is kind of standard understanding of the search.
Right.
But once you get into the richer data, like we have Wikidata, or like we would have image data on Commons and so on, it becomes more complicated, because the information you might be looking for is not text anymore. It has a structure, it has multiple languages, it has ways of organizing it, some of the data might be more important, some of the data might be less important. Some of the text may say different things depending on when it appears and what it kind of represents. So it might be a label for this entity, it might be a label for another entity this entity refers to, and so on and so forth. Right. So this requires search to be much smarter and somewhat tailored to the specific cases. So in searching Wikidata is one search query, searching in like theme space is another, searching in article space is the third one.
Yeah. Well, and then there's all the stuff with structured data, or was that already covered in one of those?
So that's the beginning of structured data. So the structured data is kind of an umbrella term, and different types of structured data would also require slightly different queries for search because of different structure. So that's the work I'm working on now in the search platform, and also some relevancy work that we are doing that I plan to bring also to Wikidata. Basically, we have started using machine learning to figure out what links are relevant. So basically, one of the challenges in search is to rank the results. Like if you found this word in 1,000 pages, one of them would be first, one of them would be second, one of them would be on place 50, and one of them would be on place 1,000. So which one you want to place where? And that's very tricky, because we don't really know what users want to see.
Sure.
They have some assumptions, and we don't really know them as for now. So we have basically we collect the data, what people are clicking, what they are going to pages, how do they go back, do they repeat the search, and so on. And we do some machine learning algorithms that give us some idea about what results might be better. So this is happening right now for article spaces. And I want to also put it on structured data spaces, so the structured data could also benefit from this kind of things.
Yeah. In Wikipedia search, it seems to more or less be that the most popular articles show up on the top.
Yes, but that depends on the query. Popularity of the article is one of the criteria, but the tricky part is like how much popularity has to contribute. Like, is it more important that your word is exactly as it in an article, or it's more important that the article is more popular?
Right.
So finding the balance between the things is one of the tricky things, and that's where machine learning might be helpful, because it will discover like people value exact match much more than popularity, for example.
Right.
So, or the reverse. So that's how we discover basically what the balance is.
Yeah. And are you involved in the auto-completion stuff too? Like,
auto-completion is a part of the search. So I was involved in that too.
Yeah.
And we did the improvement for Wikidata auto-completion. It's not done yet. It's not ideal, but it's much better. We added much better support for languages. So now
Yeah, that must
instead
be
of
tricky trying to figure out as quickly as possible what language the person is typing in.
Yeah, that's another one of the things that we did, by the way. Guessing what, like, if you type in the wrong language, guessing what language it is and trying to find which articles might match on the language that you used. Like, as you mentioned at the start, I speak several languages. So for people that have that, sometimes they, for example, might type query in Russian on English Wikipedia just because they kind of assume that is Russian Wikipedia or the reverse.
Right.
And we want to discover such queries and tell people, okay, you seem to be typing in Russian. Maybe you want to search in Russian Wikipedia. And some people just don't know really the difference. Like they just have Wikipedia and that's it.
Right, sure.
And then we expose them like, okay, this is English Wikipedia, this is Russian Wikipedia. So let's see if we can help you with both. So that's was an interesting thing, and we found the library that allows us to detect languages, and we kind of ported it to PHP and released it as a PHP software, also as open source, and we are using it now to do such things.
Oh, okay. What's the name of that?
TextCat.
Oh, okay.
So it was an existing library, but it wasn't in PHP. So we ported it to PHP, and now there is a PHP library for that.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah, I'll put a link to that in the podcast page. So, I mean, as far as structured data goes, obviously it's trickier, and there becomes a user interface aspect to it. Although, I mean, well, just the standard search page has a pretty complex interface too. But are you involved at all in user interface type decision making?
I mostly work on the back end. So on the user interface, I kind of look at it and maybe kind of give a bit of input, but I'm not like a designer or UX a specialist. So my part is mostly backend for those things.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm just I'm curious how you would create a search interface or a query backend or something for arbitrary structured data that people find on Commons.
Yeah, that's a tricky thing. So the structured data team is working hard on this right now. I think how you create such interface, and I don't really know, but I hope we will know soon because we are working on it and trying to figure it out right now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's to some extent my world. I mean, with the semantic MediaWiki and cargo extensions, that's some of what they do is, well, obviously they're intended for arbitrary structured data, and then there's attempts at creating smart interfaces around those.
Yeah. So we are basically there. I think there would be kind of several levels of it. So there would be backends which have like some syntax like we have now in the search that allows you to do kind of all kinds of advanced queries, and there would be UI that would allow you basically to work with it without becoming a programmer, let's say, and to use this syntax without really getting into the details, but just the UI, just like the German team recently released the AdvancedSearch widget, which uses a lot of advanced capabilities in a visual way without having people to learn basically all the details of the search keywords and so on.
Yeah.
So I think that would be this kind of effort. Basically the UI that uses advanced capabilities on the back end without people necessarily having to learn all these syntaxes and complex query details.
Yeah. Is Elasticsearch being used for everywhere at this point? I know, well, not for Wikidata, but
So Elasticsearch is the backend for all searches, including Wikidata. So for Wikidata, we have two things basically. We have the search, which is what like when you type it in the box on MediaWiki on wikidata.org or so. So that is driven by Elasticsearch, and there is the query service, which is a separate service that you go to query.wikidata.org,
right,
or use any of the scripts and tools that people build. There is like hundreds of them now, which is great. That's two different things, and they kind of complement each other. The search now starting to use the query service too. For example, deep category search actually uses query service on the backend. But in general, this is two different things. One of them is Elasticsearch.
One is just more or less a text search, and the other is actually getting at the data.
Yes. So they look at that data in a different ways. One of them looks more or less as a huge text, and another is a huge database.
Yeah.
But that's very, very kind of generalizing.
Right. Just briefly about Elasticsearch, it really seems to have taken over to a large extent in the last few years. I mean, that's it, sort of the dominant search engine for just anyone running MediaWiki by themselves. If they're going to use something other than the default search engine, they always
so
use
if you want a good search, then you probably want Elasticsearch, because the capabilities that we can deliver on Elasticsearch are much larger than we could do on SQL or something like that. It's a platform that is custom tailored for searching stuff, and we have invested a lot of effort to get the data exactly in the form that would be necessary for this platform. So I think that's the best thing for searching MediaWiki now, if you need really kind of good search for large wiki. Like if you have a dozen of pages, it doesn't matter that much. Right. But if you have millions, then you want Elasticsearch.
Yeah. I wanted to ask about Wikidata. It's interesting because Wikidata is run by Wikimedia Deutschland, the German Wikimedia chapter, and not by the Wikimedia Foundation. How did you I don't know if you're the only one from the Wikimedia Foundation involved with it, but how did that come about that you got involved?
So when I joined, one of the projects that I was asked to work on was the query service. And by then, nothing for it existed. There was no export to any format that existed, and there was no infrastructure. Basically, there was nothing, and we had to decide what we want to do and how we want to export Wikidata data, and how we want to build how the query service was look like. And naturally that involved working a lot with the team that built Wikidata, the German team. So that's what I did. And I still work a lot with Wikidata team because of that. So I have a decent knowledge of Wikidata code and of what's going on there, and that also helped me when I got to do the Wikidata search. So that kind of happened naturally from me working on the query service, and that continued till this day.
Yeah. Okay. Are you the only one from the Wikimedia Foundation involved with that?
I don't think I'm like. Depending on what, on the query service, it's myself and Guillaume on the operational side mostly. On the search, there are things that the Wikidata team contributing to. So I'm working together with them on on the our side, on the Wikimedia Foundation side, the rest of the team also contributes to search methods. I consult a lot with other people on the team about the search things, and we work together on that. I probably know the Wikidata best in the team, just naturally because I worked so much with it.
Yeah.
But in general, other members of the team work with Wikidata stuff too when needed.
Right. I don't know if you are involved. Obviously, you've been involved in performance stuff for a very long time.
A bit. I have been, but lately not so much.
Okay. I mean, do you think about that at all? Is that something that you may end up doing later, as far as the Wikidata Query Service specifically?
Possible. So one of the things that I did when we built the query service, so we need to basically do the dump in Wikidata to RDF. And what we did at first, we just took the standard open source libraries that exist and tried to do it, and it worked and it didn't. It worked because it did generate exactly what we wanted it to generate, but it was way too slow to be of practical application to the database like Wikidata. So that I just took the profiler and spent several weeks on profiling the code and rewrote a part of this code to be basically much more performant and much more streamlined.
Oh, wow.
And there is now a library called SPARQL, which is basically the result of this effort of optimizing the RDF generation. So that's an example of performance work that just came up naturally from what we needed.
Yeah.
And we didn't plan it to be performance work, but when we tried to run it on the massive data amounts that we have now, it turned out that existing code just doesn't cut it.
I see. Yeah, and that makes sense. That any Wikidata related project would pretty much have to involve performance.
Yeah, issues. And we still having some things that we are working on and looking at the Blaze Graph performance area too. So Wikidata is massive, so performance is always something that is on the backs of our minds and sometimes on the fronts when it becomes more important.
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as specifically querying, I don't... what is the current load on that service? I mean, how in terms of, I don't know, queries per day or second or whatever the standard metric is?
Let me see. I think we have this nice set of dashboards that...
Oh, okay.
So basically the query service, so right now on the service, it's like 20 to 40 queries per second on each server. So we have on the main cluster, we have 6 servers, but the real load is only on 3. That's the load is kind of geographically distributed, so it's not even. So let's say this is on the most loaded servers, like 20 to 30 probably queries per second that are served by each of the servers.
Yeah.
So it's times 3 on the back end, and of course we have caching front end. So if you repeat the query, it serves it from the front end. So I'm not sure I have the data now for the front end numbers, but they are there too. So that's pretty much the count. And so it's about 100 per second, I guess.
Oh, okay. I assume that's going to be, a tiny fraction of what it eventually could and will be if and when Wikidata starts getting used intensively by Wikipedia, not to mention Google and whoever else would, once Wikidata actually fulfills its promise of being, sort of the central database of general knowledge information. Do you have any guess as to what the traffic could be when it's?
I have no idea. So far, I'm looking at the front end. So we have about the average is 2 to 4 million queries per day.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty healthy load. It has been for the last year. It has been about doubled, I would say, from the last year, maybe.
Oh wow.
But it's kind of. I'm not sure if it will keep doubling or it will stabilize. Like last half year, it was mostly stable. So it's kind of hard to project further because it's a very young project. So it's hard to know what to expect. I know that people are building the tools all the time on this platform, and they ask for more capacity and more complex queries to be enabled and so on and so forth. So
right.
It's still developing, and I hope the usage would be increasing, and we will have to, on some point, we will have to think about how to support the increased usage, because it might be that we won't be able to no longer host it on the hardware that we have now. We would have to have either stronger hardware or maybe sharded models that kind of separate the load. So that's all in the future.
Yeah. Does SPARQL, which is that, for those, if people don't know, I don't know how many people actually understand any of what we're talking about now, but SPARQL is the query language used to actually access all this information. Although there's also a Wikidata query language, from what I understand, which I'm not sure if I've
there was
seen.
There was a tool developed by Magnus that used to query Wikidata before we had the query service, which is the basic language for querying. So I've actually made a translator for this language to SPARQL, which is not 100%, but it captures the most cases. So this is mostly not used anymore, except for
everyone's basically moved over to SPARQL.
Yeah. And that's so I don't even think the service is working anymore. It wasn't like it was good, like, let's say, for Wikidata back then, but for this growth that happened lately with Wikidata, it was not no longer enough.
Right.
So just to compare, when we started, we had less than a billion triples in the database in BlazeGraph, and getting to a billion was actually kind of major things that we passed a milestone. Now we have 5.5 billion triples, and it keeps growing.
Yeah.
So it's increasing, and that's even not counting the new projects that we are going to roll out, like SIEMs and structured data on Commons, which also would be queryable. So there's a lot of growth potential for this platform.
Yeah. So do you think the current architecture, not necessarily the current set of servers or the number or anything, but the current basic architecture will be able to support that continued growth?
We hope so. That's one of the things that we plan to explore very soon. What are the limits of this architecture, and how to sustain the future growth. That's one of the things that we plan to do in already this quarter. I was going to say next quarter, but it's already this quarter, and the next one after that, meaning to the end of the year. We got the hardware for that, and we will be checking basically and seeing how we can. Would this platform be enough, and if not, how we can evolve the platform or seek for solutions that would enable us to
Great. I realized I had a brief question from that I missed before. Do you work at the Wikimedia office?
Sometimes, usually like once a week, mostly from home.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think of all the I think you're the 12th person I've interviewed on this podcast, and you're the closest I've come to finding someone who works at the Wikimedia office. That's once a week. That's close enough. Stas, I think that's all my questions. Thank you very much for talking to me.
Sure. It was nice to talk to you.
This has been Between the Brackets. I want to again thank my guest, Stas Malyshev, and thank you for listening. See you next time.